Hello, and welcome to the Marble Security Podcast. My name's Dave Jevons, and I'm the host of the program. Today, we're going to be continuing our series about the 9 critical threats against mobile workers. We're going to be talking today about keyloggers, also known as keystroke loggers. Keyloggers are some of the most basic forms of malicious software on the internet. In fact, there are many tens of thousands of versions of this malicious software out there today. It used to be that a keylogger would get installed on your computer and would simply track everything you ever typed and send it to a server somewhere on the internet for a criminal to go through and meticulously go by hand and analyze everything you typed, looking for things like passwords and usernames. In the recent years, that's gotten much more sophisticated. Now, they actually look at what websites you're visiting, what applications you're using, and only send the keystrokes for those applications up to their server, which dramatically reduces the amount of data grooming that the criminals have to do. After all, it's much better to put a search engine or a grep-type technology onto this information and say, hey, I want to find logins to a certain bank, or people who are using, for example, PayPal, and I only want those passwords. Keystroke loggers have gotten increasingly sophisticated, but they've also gone cross-platform. We used to really worry about them on the Windows platform, but they've started to become available on the Mac platform, primarily through malicious applications that people are tricked into downloading and installing, rather than rootkits and that sort of thing that we see on the Windows platform. Now, sometimes people think that the iOS operating system on the iPhone or the iPad or the Android operating system are immune to keystroke loggers. And I think in general, that's a fairly safe assumption. However, we have discovered at least one way to implement a keystroke logger on those devices. And that is by installing a keyboard, I guess you'd call it a driver, but really a keyboard application. An example of this is Emoji, which allows you to basically create emoticons on your keyboard. So it's not just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you can also select a smiley face, a heart, a guy running down the street, somebody on a bus, little flowers, that kind of stuff that you can send in your text messages and emails. Well, that's effectively a keyboard driver, very similar to what you would see in the Windows environment. And if one were unscrupulous, one could certainly, inside of a program like that, add the ability to send those keystrokes up to a third-party server and track everything that you type through the keyboard or virtual keyboard on your iPhone, your iPad, or your Android device. Keystroke logging protection from Marble prevents the most common way that criminals are compromising VPN and cloud services, which is stealing usernames and passwords from employees' computers and devices with keyloggers. On the iPhone and on the Android operating systems, we scan apps, we look for known malicious ones, we run them in sandboxes, particularly on Android. We run them in a sandbox and look for malicious behavior, like, for example, a keyboard app that's sending data off the device. On the Windows platform, what we do is a little more sophisticated. We actually install encrypted keyboard drivers right down at the operating system level that encrypt keystrokes when you're running the Marble application to surf the web securely. Those are decrypted inside of the virtual machine in the separate operating system in the Marble client. So even if a zero-day type new keystroke logger was invented tomorrow that we'd never seen, it would get into the main operating system stack and it would start seeing keystrokes, but they would be encrypted. They'd be gibberish. So you wouldn't be able to see, for example, your username and password to whatever site you're accessing or to the VPN or what have you. So that's a little primer on keystroke loggers. There's a ton of them out there, and beware of them. Even though they're simple, there's a lot of technology being put on the back end to deal with large amounts of data to streamline them. One last thing I'll note is I read an article recently about some folks testing out their new malicious software, and in fact their keystroke loggers are posting passwords and usernames to Pastebin, where anyone can see the usernames and passwords that are being posted up there. So be safe, be careful on the internet, and we'll see you for the next version of the Marble Security podcast.